Did you go over that?
Oh, maybe that was it.
We are ready.
We are ready. So I'll just say thank you all for coming out. I think Timotha and Robert can introduce each other much better than I could introduce either one of them. So, but Timotha has been a friend and an ally for many, many, many years, and very pleased that she proposed that we get this reading together. So,
Yes, thank you.
Timotha, I leave it to you.
Most everybody in the room knows me already, so I don't need any introduction. So I'm going to start off with an invocation. Is this good?
Yeah, I'll turn it up from the back.
Okay. Beloved Hecate, we invoke you. Hecate of the way, I praise you, lovely lady of the crossroads, you with 3 heads, looking all ways at once. You with 6 arms, bearing 2 torches to show the way, a sword to clear the way, a key to open the way, and a whip to ensure the going. Your snake show the character and wisdom of the way, and an apple, the fruit of the way. Saffron cloaked goddess of the heavens, the underworld, and the sea. O goddess of the cave and tomb, we invoke you. Come to this mystery celebrated with the dead. Come, solitary one, cowled one, lover of the wilderness, you who exalt among the deer. Night-going one, pacing with your dogs. Invincible queen, you who cry with the beasts. Disheveled one of irresistible form, bringer of intoxication and nightmares, keeper of the keys of all the universe, mistress, guide, lover, nurturer of youth. You alone saw the abduction of Persephone. O mountain wanderer, whose voice we hear in the wind and water and rumble of earth, be present at this sacred rite. Accept our offering, revealer of shadows. Remove our obstacles and strengthen us. Hear us, Hecate. Accept this wine, these jewels of the hedge. Come, Hecate, welcome, hail. Crawl out of the dust, or smoke, or whatever obscures. Crawl out, leap out of the jaws of death, or leap into those jaws. Dance well, O leaper. Where do we go when we die? What happens when we let go? Relax into breath, let it go. Settle. The coolest thing your mouth can do is speak. Taste. Eat. Make love. Suck on things. This is a gezel. I'm not sure of the pronunciation of the Arabic word. There's a beautiful, thick silver, gray and brown coyote pelt, bushy and huge. I think she was a wolf. I wonder how she died. At my elbow, gorgeous velvet, maroon and beige, bearded irises, 3 outer, 3 inner, 3 secret petals enclose a hidden temple. A severe, striated, dark green column of mother-in-law's tongue plays sentinel at the top of the ladder, invokes Gertrude Stein. A beautiful bouquet of scarlet and fuchsia poppies dance, a blessing in the air, before the Guru Rinpoche shrine. Yellow, orange, and rust straw flowers and seaweed curlicues grace the corner with a fervent link to the southern gods. Timotha goes all the way around her room and resting place, past the gorgeous calico cat and the Hotel Wentley poems. Gazzle 2. Kudzu. Bittersweet tendrils wave in search for purchase to light. Whole forests along this coast lie choked in endless night. Cedar trees become impenetrable tents of dark death. Nightmare vegetation destroys beauty's imprisoned sight. Voracious sameness transforms all to the same bright green, from Wall Street to Amazon and Indonesian blight. Down from midair, leaf to branch and trunk to hot, moist earth, every avenue of life is bound in coils too tight. The silent horror of the vine entwines, chokes, buries Boston, Providence, New Haven, and New York might. But as Garrett, so sweetly noticing, pays homage, look and never tire of her coastal marshes, salt bright. With astonishing, mesmerizing beauty, she soothes horror of the vine with a mantle of verdant flight. Forsooth, her grace holds me, nourished, heart shored up. The great kindness of the marsh enfolds me in holy fight. This is the book of Hecate. Horizon cracks at the sun. On this solstice, dance in it. Death moves casually through our lives. Only connect proprioception. Joby, giggling, said, close your eyes. Bring your index fingers together in front of your face. Only connect. John Wieners is right. Poetry is magic. But so is painting, dance, and music. Art lights our way. Lanterns along the shore, from here to the other side. Like another John said the last weekend I saw him alive, I'm not afraid to die. I'm just not sure how to get from here to there. And his eyes sparkle. Wieners wrote The Dark Brew. Tar pits open, a distant event, distant voice, calling ever so faintly. Mama, hear me, help me, Al Green sings in the combat zone, Boston, 1973, and I danced stripping in the Teddy Bear Club, entertained the city's coroner. Hands scarred from formaldehyde, he was a regular of mine, came 3 afternoons a week for conversation. I liked him. Death moves ever so casually through our lives. Then and now, in the midst of the assembled, poised, energetic, and peaceful wisdom gods and goddesses, a friend's child is found dead. On the streets of San Francisco, heroin New Year. Nonetheless, kind and auspicious, death moves. Dark moon at winter solstice. Prayer to the armies of the world, especially the ones in Iraq after Angela Davis. If you come in the morning, you will be bathed in gold. If you come in the morning, your neighbors will dance. If you come in the morning, trumpets will play in the plum tree and hummingbirds will visit you. If you come in the morning, the birds will elude the cats. If you come for the morning, the cats will face the dogs without rancor. If you come for the morning, we will sit in the moment of her turning. When they come in the morning, we will stop in the new light of your smiles. Solstice sending 1. Go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. We say go deeper. What exactly do we mean by this? Deeper with the summer solstice, sun burns all day, a hole, time and space ajar in the act of turning light. The sword she uses lays open your heart. She is not kind. Wish for the dark. This is a quote. If you can't learn from history, what can we learn from? Mystery. Close quote. Can we stand seeing, knowing what we know? Rising from love, I pass a newspaper, agony's headlines. There is no end of weeping for the sorrows of the world. Bring on the magic, go deeper into the mystery of why we are here, charring in the universe. We call the dark in all its forms, lifeblood of the Imago Mundi, forms and hymns, praises of all that grows us, forms us fierce or sweet, weeping or laughing, womb of all that is, dancing on the lap that holds us. 2. John Keats reads the news. Load every rift of your subject with ore. What imagination seizes as beauty must be truth, whether it existed before or not. Refugee, imagine an altar. Refugee, traverse the torn landscape. Find the place for an altar, maybe a bomb crater. Invite habitation, set up an altar. On the open plain overgrown with columbine, dark clouds arise. Tend the altar, whether it exists or not, being in uncertainties of any country's foreign policy. Horror visits, bombs startle, where they fall unplanned. Horror visits the landscape. Children plant pink, blue, and black crosses to erase the burden of mystery. Rift between refugee and the rift. Child and child, citizen and law, child and child, parent and child, law and law. What poem, subject with ore, art comprehends, plays of magnificent evil? Even I don't believe that. Some rifts can never be filled. There is the place for the altar. There is the place for the altar. Send invitations, Kosovars to New Jersey and Colorado. Hang in the impossible. Columbine grows in the rift. Dare to imagine the plain. Set up the altar. Refugee of moment. We were kids. Some of us went to NAM. Some of us didn't. We did other things. We went to Canada. We went to jail. We stayed in the brig. We danced and stripped. You've got to take care of me. I just got back from NAM, said the young sailor at the stage door. Shit, the stripper growled. You shouldn't have been there. I wish I could meet that young man again and give him the blowjob he wanted. Musings and things found in notebooks. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Hecate. I see you in the smoke of your offering. I feel you in the air, in the stroke of my arm. I smell you in your incense. I know you in the cast of light from your torches. I follow you to the depths of your cave. Permutations of life, transformed in the cauldron, queer vision beyond measure, soaked in the blood of wounded friends, held. The stream does not die, is not born, live in mystery, beyond what we know. We do disappear into beware initiation. Begin with vastness. Come not to this book. We will become entangled in promises, held to account. Commitment to youth, all of them. The ones who die for love at 12. The ones who kill for revenge or life at 16. The ones who waste away for want of freedom or self-hatred. The ones who strike out never to return. The ones who cross-dress to go to sea or lead nations and are burned at the stake. The ones who heal and are burned at the stake. The ones who reach for flowers and are raped. Who listen to the earth, the trees and their grandmothers and are burned at the stake and become queens of the dead. The ones who write songs, poems, and prescriptions, who dance in the night, carry a great light. These are not us, not our future, or even the earth's. She can take care of herself. But the pledge remains in sacred initiation. Nurture the youth. Every word of invocation is an universe. Key to possibility. They are promises you make in this book. Take it up to go between, queer in deep space. There are laws. There are no excuses. There are no praises. Pull her cave around you. Wake up. Vast on the path, pledged to dark space is not easy. This book is a realization. We wander lawless and proud. She takes us by the hair, dark compass, puts our hearts on her path. Witness now, suffering. Breathe water and air. Little froggy comes, sings the end of worlds. Death, let go. We can do more than we know. Stars are born between our thighs, scream as we are born. Cut open, then cauterized life follows us, but we cannot suckle. Long the mountain rises, pushed by nether continents. All is lost, stove by monsters, oceans of darkness. Leviathan, call our guide from her cave. She knows by each key placed 2 torches, inserted to ring true to every voice, calling in space. We are bounded by. Tatiana rages in her enclosure. She leaps to kill. Do not kid ourselves. Once we've got it, her attention is forever. You know what? I love my life. I do. I really do. I must learn how to be more effective with those who don't. Let me just sit for a moment in splendor. All I ask is to know the flame that I am. The taboo. In 1968, we found an Australian Shepherd puppy. She was black and white, silver and gray. She had 1 brown eye and 1 blue. We called her Ruby Tuesday, after a song of the time. She was black and white, silver and gray. Many years passed, a lifetime together. We called her Ruby Tuesday, after a song of the time. She was my friend, my protector, my companion. Many years passed, a lifetime together. In 1983, the Revolutionary Collective was annoyed. She was my friend, my protector, my companion. She was old and smelly, arthritic, and barked a lot. In 1983, the Revolutionary Collective was annoyed. They said she's inconvenient, a distraction from revolution. She was old and smelly, arthritic, and barked a lot. One day hunting treats, she got lost in the neighborhood. They said she's inconvenient, a distraction from revolution. I got a call from the pound, we've got your dog. One day hunting treats, she got lost in the neighborhood. I went to the pound to get her. She got stiffly up from the floor. I got a call from the pound, we've got your dog. I must put her down, she's old and inconvenient. I went to the pound to get her. She got stiffly up from the floor. Goodbye, Tuesday. I hugged her. You're a good dog. I must put her down. She's old and inconvenient. The technician discouraged me from staying. He said there'd be uptightness. Goodbye, Tuesday. I hugged her. You're a good dog. I left her there and went for a walk, estranged from my own mess. The technician discouraged me from staying. He said there'd be uptightness. For many years I've told this tale to assuage my grief and confess. I left her there and went for a walk, estranged from my own mess. Cruel coward to betray a friend and companion, turn away from love and connection. Again and again the story spills out, but the end is always the same. For many years I've told this tale to assuage my grief and confess. I see her face, she wags her tail, I feel my own condition. Cruel coward to betray a friend and companion, turn away from love and connection. Making a revolution requires more than Marx and Lenin. I see her face, she wags her tail, I feel my own condition. This poem is hard, I can barely go on, there's a reason it's taboo. Making a revolution requires more than Marx and Lenin. Even today, 25 years later, I feel desperate and panic to change it. This poem is hard, I can barely go on, there's a reason it's taboo. Yet again and again the ancient mariner waylays a passerby. Even today, 25 years later, I feel desperate and panic to change it. I killed my friend, betrayed our trust. Listen again and again. Yet again and again, the ancient mariner waylays a passerby, until one day in Buddhist company, I finished my endless tale. I killed my friend, betrayed our trust. Listen again and again. One of our company had an old helping dog lying next to her chair. Until one day in Buddhist company I finished my endless tale. Painfully and slowly the old dog got up. He came directly over to me. One of our company had an old helping dog lying next to her chair. At the end of my story, the old dog looked up, licked my hand, then went back by her chair. In 1968, we found an Australian Shepherd puppy. Until one day in Buddhist company, I finished my endless tale. She had one brown eye and one blue. One of our company had an old helping dog lying next to her chair. Sun-bright magic light, even in the middle of the night. Orange marigold, sun on gold, orange bright, even in the middle of the night. Comfort in the midst of terrors, grief, loneliness, events tumble one after another. Don't worry, I've got you. Don't let go of me in the flood. For Ted. Slip into moonlight near full. Slip in beside him, sleeping. Such comfort to snuggle against his hugeness. Run my hand along his furry heart. Warm, he wakes a little. Speaks how much he loves me, how much I love him. Only the moonlight on the breezy, cold deck knows my fears, my unimaginables. Late at night or early morning, beautiful yet cold, I wander in space, listening at the borders, his moving, adjusting, peeing, laborious. I wander in my space, also huge. Hecate charnel ground, Buddha charnel ground, thelemic field. Power unrelenting, insistent, here in this place, in all variety, I am real. My mother would be a hurricane, and I, exalted, fly with her. Round and round the beautiful tempest shapes my will to ride her energy. Her longing sweeps everything into itself. Her fury overwhelms. My mother would be a hurricane, and I cry out in fear and thrill to be part of it. My mother would be a hurricane, and I a storm-tossed sail skimming her waters. The ocean of her tormented heart smashes the hull of me. My tattered ancient sails, weak prayers in her outrageous wind and rain. My mother would be a hurricane, nothing, no citadel, bridge, or man withstands her surge. My mother would be a hurricane, there is nothing more dangerous than she. Yet I hunger for women, compelled by her energy. My mother would be a hurricane, no man compares. There is nothing more powerful, more beautiful than she. I ride her wind. My mother would be a hurricane, and we, her storm-tossed sails, skimming her swell. My mother would be a hurricane, houses, stories, ships sail by. My mother would be a hurricane, I sail her seas bravely, fearful of sudden, o'erwhelming surge, fishing and exploring her depths. Yet her storm forever keeps me from shore. I cannot bring her bounty home. My mother would be a hurricane, and I her tattered sail. My mother would be a hurricane, how long have I circled in her tempest? Dark and storm of night and shadow, long have I listened to her howl, her moans and whines fill my ears. Yet her eyes bright, light, warm sun, blue, liquid sky, utterly peaceful, a view itself created by the furious, swirling galaxy of storm. Sky through the eye of the storm, forgotten again and again in the fury of the storm. Preoccupied with staying alive, I would not be the sailor I am without the storm, the forever sky. Storm-trained view through the eye we see briefly, then the storm again. Maintain awareness of sky. I am I because of the hurricane. This is for Garrett. 'Tis time to spend subaltern way, our time, our love, wandering and chatting, whatever floats by. This time, autumnal equinox, simply enjoying this and that, old lovers in a way. Yet poems we read, sharp punctuation, delineation brings into our meanderings sharper times, tether us to all the others of our lives. Vibrate the room, lights up. Here in these our hearts we meander more, thus held and nourished. Garrett uses quarters, spins the compass of his life magnetic all round. The tower of love advances, stepping over all manner of creature and difficult terrain. We will, is all he said. We will. Homage to Ken Irby. Turning over in the morning, overlapping dreamscape, mindscape, roomscape, the golden still at the horizon sun sends shafts into my blue room. Ariadne strides out of bluescape, offering her breasts. Spacescape, whateverscape, is oracle. Bookscape, stacked around me on the floor, is oracle. I reach for the intent on, where it's been since its arrival, placed among Lobos, Jack Spicer, Duncan's HD, Nico Peck's Birds, Making Love Impossibility, Promethea, Kalevala, the Red and Dark Goddesses, Garrett's Heavenly Tree, a variety of Chuck Stein, emergency Vajrayana texts, and more. I confess I don't read books. I read in books. Only the adventures of my new favorite, Laotian coroner, are read from beginning to end, cover to cover. I reach for the intent on a beautiful, refreshing morning swim in the lakes of Point Reyes National Seashore. Reach nakedly for the poems, the poem, even a piece of one, to follow the sun and open the day. It is my ritual to visit these myriad scapes, alive in the sanctity of friendship, life flow, river of love and poetry. Reach for the intent on and let it open as it will. Let it open as it will. Something Joby Kelly taught me, use books as oracles. The intent on opens to for Michael Broadhead, the children in the Civil War and the children of the war. May my day be like this, dancing vertically, wearing a horizontal skirt of layers of dream, intention, history, geography, rocks, trees, and art. Picture us 2 miles tall, our feet in the Colorado River, dancing huge, the Grand Canyon as our skirt. Connections I feel with you that we remember. My maternal grandmother, born in 1883 on the banks of the Wabash, moved with her husband to Springfield, Missouri, then to Boonville, where my mother was born, then to Joplin. You met the cousin from Wichita. My adored grandmother, Ruby Hall Barnett, got blessed in the wave of spiritualism in the 20s, took the whole family of 11 to seances to speak with Clementine, who died of scarlet fever at 12. There's more, as always, for everyone, more to tell. These things and the big national cataclysms that haunt all our scapes, you connect, reveal, celebrate, and make intelligible, beautiful, and new. And oh yeah, thank you for the homage to Edward Burne-Jones. There is a world we find on the edge of desire, always yearning, always imagined, spark inspired, sweet infatuation with life, not able or willing to step off into vastness of the eye of beheld landscapes. The void envelops always our bodies, all of us, as big as the whole Hudson River Valley. A Frederick Edwin Church, we went to Alana together. A California landscape rolls away east, northeast from Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta. The women I love, whether we swim in desire or pace the shore of each other. Landscape, our refuge, inspires, excites all ways. But it is us walking in each other, next to, outside of, in view of. Heathcliff walking, proclaiming in conversation with the Moors, hear me, O nature, this is my life. Ahab or Buddha, molecules with all, tender reality comes of various obsession, where you take me in, hold me in. How are we doing? Yeah? Bound to happen. It's okay, baby. We'll pick it up in a moment. The pregnant moon. It is said that the moon stores all images. It is said that the moon drives us mad. In love or war or loneliness, her weight has indeed blessed or cursed every form visited on earth resides in the light of that body, pock-marked by time. She gives birth, and we believe enough to create truth, X-rated nationhood, dangerous and full of pain. Offerings on the smoke, desperate, reach beyond this embrace. Earth holds the moon our intimate, not like the polygamous sun, with relations everywhere in the universe. Threads between bodies are light. Ariadne shows us through the maze of our own making. I think that's enough.
Okay, let's readjust this. I feel like standing. I don't know how much sitting I can do here. Okay. Let's see here. I didn't get an introduction, so I need to introduce myself. Well, I need no introduction. Who needs an introduction? No, it's a pleasure being here on a number of scores as a guest of Timotha. She's so gracious to put up with my craziness. Maybe it's part of the moon. I'm glad you read that piece, Timotha, and brought up about the moon causing madness. Because, well, that brings to mind a line, which I did not write, but I like very much. It goes, armed with madness, I set off on a long journey, on a long voyage. And that's by Mary Butts. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Mary Butts. Robert Duncan, Robin Blazer, Garrett Lansing, all these people admired Mary's work very much. She wrote very quirky, odd, supernatural material, as well as very Whitman-esque sorts of things. She was an important figure. Besides the poetry and the fiction she wrote, she actually told Aleister Crowley how to revise Book 4 in Magic and Theory and Practice initially. It was like, she's out of her mind. And when he looked at her revisions, he was like, damn, she's right. So the old crow actually humbled himself. But that line about armed with madness, I think it's an important one. I like it a lot. It seems to make an awful lot of sense, at least in context of dealing with everything we're faced with these days, especially the political situation. Insanity seems to be one of the best defenses against it. But to be more accurate, or at least a little bit more focused on the idea of poetic madness, A lot of my work focuses on magic, on esotericism, and as I've been doing a lot of work recently on John Dee's conception of the ether and the Renaissance conception of the ether, I came across an interesting passage in Ficino's commentary on the Phaedrian Charioteer. And he mentioned something that I hadn't been aware of before, that Proclus in the Platonic theology mentioned that Plato was, we tend to get this idea that Plato was most stimulated by conversation, the peripatetic process, hanging out with other philosophers. But Proclus, and I tend to think he might be onto something, Proclus said that no, Plato was actually more inspired by sylphs and spirits and energies of general localities, the poetic madness, the poetic furor. But it's important to keep in mind, the actual Greek term that they used was mania. And so the idea of poetic mania as being something that is gleaned from the genius loci, the actual intelligence of the place or space, I think that's key, and it's easy to lose track of, especially when we read these more academic approaches to interpreting Plato, to interpreting that mindset. And so I mention that because, well, for two things. Primarily the land, the energy, the mania for the land. To me, that's one of the most important and interesting things for me. I like to stick to basics when I write poetry, and the things that move me the most, I see no need to complicate them. And it are those very things that I think are probably the major movers. So I'd like to start with a few pieces, and in part this is for Richard. This is the first two pieces. One's for a memorial piece I wrote for Garrett Lansing called The Figure In. And these pieces are about freeing oneself from time. One way to do it is to die. I don't think it's necessary. I think there's a way to free oneself from the bounds of time without actually shedding the corporeal frame, although it certainly probably works. I think, I'm not sure, but I think it works. So without further ado, The Figure In for Garrett Lansing. To figure out the carpet layers at such pains to discover what it is that's so fascinating, even on hands and knees, to get a closer look, maybe taste or even hold the design to the ear. Do they work this way intentionally? And is there anything in charge of the light layers? Imagine leaves pressed in a book, permanently staining pages over so that any words are interfered with. What can never be removed, rewritten, or deleted, only what is captured from the past, caught up in the present display. Neglect or forgetfulness can hide, otherwise lays exposed. An optic game discovered in childhood. The texture of the old green living room rug, stared at until it moved and came to life, rising up into the eyes. Certain patterns appeared and isolated, grew animate. This was the largesse of play between the fields taking hold, showing something greater may be done. They work to stimulate, torment, and mystify by design. That is a maze meant for exploration, in wonder, or by hooking one fiber with an extraneous thread, pulling in more, and unintentionally unravel consciousness, fixated on making connections. Part 2. The Ground Book. He showed me death in life, by verse and flesh, an unreadable mess at times. Aging. The winds showed direction. Ptolemy understood birds and other animals that depend on air movement. Petals and feathers indicate thermals. Invite us to ride. Acceptance for the tail. A boost. But head-on, a struggle, scattering ashes in an upward spiral, an omen carrying seeds for sowing. In a single little water droplet, every snowflake's crystalline array, holding one another across apostate lines. Yes, even in symmetry, spreading out in the welcoming immensity and dispersing, ever-expanding characters beyond time. And here's a piece for another very close friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago. He was a professor at Kent State University, and he only was able to enjoy a year or two of retirement in North Carolina when pancreatic cancer caught him. Lou Fine, he was an expert in Jewish American literature and a wonderful person. For Lou, I would sit Shiva, trident and all governed by an inflamed open eye, covetous, famished, seeking, if I knew how. For the longest time I thought it was sit shiver, and it is a shaking off of loss in remembrance, or should be beyond morbidity in a life well lived, means something. Wailing's place in the process for survivors should be short and bitter sweet. 2. The necessity of losing certain things, such as a tongue to articulate, a soul to bond with emotions, readjusting values and never regretting missed opportunities, ordering, arranging, and organizing, to step on tiles alternately based on color obsession, because symmetry is compelling orders, coordinates, truncations, and vestibulations, emancipating nonsense on a dissonant run. My, how a consonance is so grounding, takes the daring right out of the stride. 3. As if anyone wants their cake just to see it growing old, the lining eventually dries out and tires of ordinary sensory satisfaction. 4. What was said between us came from an outgrowth, organically, our lives trumpeting through the twists of the vine, sharing channels, one portion dying off and going the way of aging, the shared truculence against ignorance in our souls cross-pollinating and trailing tails on, feeling like yet another child orphaned from a union cut short in the flesh again, with only the impeccable acting upon memories to ennoble them. Boy, I miss Lou. And here's sort of a afterword of those two pieces, untitled. And I see yourself in another body, a different sex, speaking vastly different word wills, as we were and I on a cliff hearing an ocean sea's singing surge, crying out of existence becauses no longer contained. So there's the first movement. Let's take it a different step. I'm going to read a little passage out of a long poem I've been working on, which is sort of connected, entitled Intersecting Visions, Vision Intersects, and there's a few copies out front. The first part's sort of interesting. I felt good about it, and I have a number of friends that are from Eastern Europe and a few other countries, and it amazed me that all the non-native speakers of English really like this book. And just about all the native speakers sort of like looked at me cross-eyed. I was like, damn. Although a good friend of mine, Norman Finkelstein, he set me going right. Norman's a great writer and a fairly astute critic. He said, and I misunderstood him, he said, it's sort of a sprawling mess. I thought he said sprawling mesh. I like my misinterpretation, but it got me going. I said, a sprawling array of words can act as a mesh. It can sift things out. It can hold other things. So, without any delays, I'll jump into the middle of this piece. In preparation for moving beyond primal darkness, as stars scatter, isolating space surrounds and opens, the shallows give way to beckoning depths. One too many hives filled with nectar of nightshade blossoms, offering sweetly poisoned sight, in relative danger called upon to open at dusk. No longer nestles, but releases constellations, essence activating all the way down the throat and crown, caressing and penetrating, intrepid glands given a rise after the birth. A few species even consume their own. Discarding feeds the scarabs and corpse-cleaner worms, the goat skull on the anthill, a testament to neglect, rendering a thorough removal of decay and rot, evidenced in the clean, bleach-white bones remains. Ready for display, the less learned about the left out, the more they can be. For the love of flying ointment of the mind, traveling extensively in quantum leaps and bounds to otherworldly spaces, found for what is not lacking here an array of ingredients: aconite, mandrake, datura, a heart-shaped stone, and Paleolithic fragments of ancient lives strewn between dreams and where things wake in tune with parallel harmonized spells, chemically composed witches' lore, recipes, writ-induced intoxications, decoctions, where, by nature and happenstance, certain things fall in the mix, evading prediction and the rigors of preparation, rendering them priceless. For instance, the soil of St. James Parish in Louisiana is the only place Perique tobacco grows. Here the Choctaw grew and pressed their tobacco in wooden presses made of stumps, an isolate procedure resonant with the land. So maybe it's time to move out of the land of the dead a little bit. Well, it may not ever be possible. How did Garrett put it? The older we get, the more we may receive messages from the dead without necessarily perceiving them. Speaking of which, and here's a little piece Garrett liked quite a bit. So, possession, because ownership is in the hands of the gods, I made, homegrown, evocation of emotions. The sycamore tree that spreads the old man's essence from his roots, up from the trunk by the corner of Farm, Brook, and Woodbridge streets that call up country, and the creek just at the right level, its flow gurgle pitch to consume attention, then soothe, as it's all about forgetting the past, up till, caught by the momentum as deity reflects, enough of not being God. Spheres of love meet, react to that reaction. Plenitude, if any more can dance through me, I should burst at the seams. Eyes studying, wider and wider till the woods alive with spiraling fields become visible. Energy grows and rises from the composting killed floor. He walks in her sleep. It was an endlessly floating phantom of night on the point of dissolving into immensity, immense in itself. And that quote's from Herman Brock's The Death of Virgil. Fantastic novel if you're interested in reading something about the experience of death. I wonder how Brock was able to write this without actually dying himself. Of unreason on its own, like a crazy cat funambulating, or coming out of an or, collectively, created from the heat of unrequited lust, so it breeds a field, a sort of fantasy space, where there is a dying to come together, in its zone, world soul, secure, bridged between a moon below and a sun above, plain, dark, and obscured, until taking full advantage of chance, or walking to the dangerous line between them, alchemically honed, fed pain from a botched-up broken bone alembic, opened from an autumn's final fall, my third self-inflicted charm of 11:30:16, earning me a C in retrogrades movement, forgetting to take painkillers that evening, and the blinding cries juice it yields, a memorable drink to wash all bitter pills away. Like Carezza sexualis, retention, in the trance of swapna, dreaming, allowed to be unimpeded by inhibitions, carried to fruition in the hidden recesses of sleep, bound, a confused contradiction under the anchored eye, is a formula completing itself. That's no lie, but the way it is. Weren't the texts enough, she asked, perhaps herself. What gets put in is what comes out of collaborations, gone solitary, with long letters written to a self ever stranger. Behind the mind's mouth, shut, reason bleeds dry hells. The long haul ever extracting, the stripped down self's an extrusion, unwound, around, between, a halved soul that's had. And on the flip side of that message, and this came from some fortuitously placed graffiti, some of the best I've ever written. Above bathroom stall blistered paint from a cigarette ember etched inscription, "Kill me," I found some tantric wisdom. For a good time, call yourself a stranger. It then followed, for a binding time, call stranger yourself, or maybe just call yourself strange and be with it. I wish I could find more graffiti like that, but usually never worth a fraction of that. You got to be happy for what you get, I guess. Yes, I'm going to read a little bit from the second part of Intersecting Visions, which is less of a sprawling thing. And this part actually comes out of a camping trip that I'd taken up in the mountains on the Blue Ridge, because I like to do quite a bit of that when I can. An eagle headed east, flying into view, then two flocks of turkey, one on the bald, another near the open road, and an owl wingspan the width of my truck at dusk, heading back toward the departure point. With an abundance of avian omens in 2 days' time, but all trips to the mountains seem to coincide with wonders, such as these signs of foraging and hunting in winter's partially sustaining light. When we take to feeding in the darkness ourselves before the lights go out that make all bodies between placement, thought, idea, created form, imply impish play of maddening mediums, mechanisms. Writing on the wall of the vehicle, its body infinitely bound, by and by, presence of mind, dispenses presence in time, overlooked as well as imparted, personae, personal, gates of power. Everything encountered is an opening impression left that's a key, and run over diction in reverse, such as spliced words and feelings franken twined together, honey badgered to tatters, primarily by attempts to impress through erudition. Making the fire creative, not going backward, but led to a former me, my bound out of the gates, subsonic song, silence between the spaces, picked up in the ear, almost unheard is soothing, sensed is sure real too. What if ifs become ours? The abhorrent sheaths may get enlightening before they're shed, and mainstay faith drifts to the wayside, supplanted by focused intentionality arises from the margins out of view. Drifting notions bump into the middle of the night, part the veil of dark and light, elusive gray aria of dust particles participate and reflect off puddles, become ponds after inundating rains form dark branches, even the fallen tree's trunk, and the shadow hidden beneath is still cast covering ground, shielding from light, a shelter from sight. But being without sheaths does not necessarily mean the exposure is any greater, but because what is it? Left unanswered is an anchor against definition, and an assurance of being sought, of seeing, sensuousness, eros, never out of bounds, expansive. I felt good after writing that. For a change, actually writing something where, okay, No answer, no explanation. What a relief. Speaking of relief, here's something with a little bit more kinetic. Devil of a movement. With iron in chains, seized apart from natural causes, courses, and put to work, opposing play on our way, the red oak limb, smooth, stripped of bark, became a cane. Our arms branch out like rivers, Herman Brock. That being acts, place feathers on feet, and erase terminating periods, or, in the final fade, grabs at a piece of the last sentence of the reborn, whisper almost inaudibly between where you stand and the immensity there, a book that, if it's part, become of the self opened by stages, atmospheres, eyes, and incarnations, lives. What was all the fighting and yelling about, left against right and vice versa? Nothing, just opposition to the whole. Perhaps that is another reason why people used to cook outside, to keep from burning down the house to stay alive. It's visible when lying face down under the light, a shadow of each hair twitches with every beat, heart released under a greater body's pressure, embodying imperfection, entertains and elevates base elements and materials, obstacles, cycling, the reprimand of what we're all doing, always at a distance, to keep it attractive, numinous, never altogether identifiable. The din at dusk of crickets and cicadas seem to say time is running out. There may be yet enough thoughts never rest are the howling part of the brain, and the dark of the moon on its collision course with Earth, ground again, eliciting an end note. How we doing? Good? Hanging in there? Timotha? Okay. Okay. Time for a little more levity at a truck stop in West Virginia. Grendelvania, adult store, limbs. We take them seriously here. Licensed a quarter, lose some. The large dark man in the restaurant discussed an extended penis plan over his fried green Mitchell, while the Christian couple said race at the neighboring table. Old-time religion fungal for you and me. The things you overhear. Let's see here. Yes, I'll read this one. Beechnut trees have been important to me ever since I was young. Do beechnuts grow here? Do you get? I didn't think so. I think they need a lot of wintering. This is probably the wrong zone. Poems of beechnut as a food. Bands of softened solar glow cut silk swift, rustling and twisting through trees. The wind took on the appearance of a strange bird race, close to being reptilian in feel but not looks. Wisps, the nephews of gusts, crept in between the boards of our study to form the long, slender lines in russet orange swirl that led to the eagle-like head, imparting only to me a sense that death had not come, even though it felt that way. 2. That there is pain in the field, where the brush, reeds, and hedgerows have been cropped, sheared down, yielding enmity, and growing energy where previously red-winged blackbirds could perch and run sentries, taking no further, cut off the haven and the potential to metaphor, for we cannot gather the plants transformed to violence by the harvest technique, i.e. rendered usable. In other words, let the clearing come back and the rushes lay upon our mind for a fitting crown the hat that is a hut, radiant compost heat. 3. Beechnut, the eternal trinot pods I remember picking up from the grounds of Bushy Run battlefield in my youngest years. Also Blevin's stepping stone into the court of the half-kings, Gaisuta and Gausterox. resemble star anise, scent, a much more subtle aromatic flavor. 4 wooden petals expand as they dry, blossom to expose 2 triform seeds, 6 and 4 lotus power, nut as meat, but as Green's Friar Bacon admonished, to let thee see how scholars used to feed, how little meat refines our English wits. Yet magicians are the true chefs and ingredients of the convivium of sense, the woody food cast from the tree. Tough mind stuff and tough mind stuffers together circle a cycle into intense golden orb. 4. Earth of water, an apple clear ripening on the verge of autumn moonlight, ease and wisps of dark, cold, salubrious air for biting into, clearing out the summer heat and wind, helps to round out meditation on fire, beechnut symmetry. It is the sex of the symbol that drives us wild, snapping a sharp invagination on seed blades, bouncing off rays so the sight beams wild, building a bridge between oculus and intellectus, the fecund bed of the phantasm. The poet is the page, nature writes on. 5. His back, a servant and courier of the ever-widening rift, where to plant it. As Joachim Tonkius felt, whether it be vegetable, mineral, or animal seed, the plot or womb is crucial, for it draws from the mummia. The ground exudes. Light produces like. The babe in the egg is a mummy, and its perfection can only be found in resurrection, birth, balsam no further. 6. The turf I drum with my feet kicks up a rhythm of mixed fruits. Some acidic and sour, others mellowed sweet, like rotted apples give off a musk in the air of tannin scents. Fall temple. The poet cannot help but become the things written about. Harvest frozen in the dry form of the nut anchored in its static bloom, wired for security, for life, propagation, cured, it can be dropped, will not break.
You got 10 minutes.
Hand signal, be subtle, come on. Jeez.
I don't know
Hey.
how to do that.
Okay. Perfect. Because it just, yeah. Here's a fun piece, one that I wrote after I almost got stuck out on a mountain road in the first heavy snowstorm of the year up on the Blue Ridge without snow tires. That was brilliant. But it did elicit an interesting poem. Mountain Scent. The moment that is full of the earth is full. Ken Irby from Variations 13. A perfect fire ignites out of ecstatic providence from the top down upon carefully layered kindling logs. For survival, set needs, branches of the self-same passion enables the able, supple limbs upon the trunk. From the crown down, pathway blazing, the same applies to our bodies, caught in this illuminating descent. Unveiled in the coupling opposites, the third arises, union, reaction, flames spreading downwards, dictated by the eye of the spark. So much light reflected off the fresh fallen snow, rare now even up at higher altitudes in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The storm of 16th February 13 caught everyone off guard. On the other side at Courthouse Falls, a peculiar absence of snow nonetheless had the stream running high. At camp, the fire immolates inward, bestowed 3 lone logs, fan outward flames. On Devil's Pitchfork, the center tine, hollowed out, a hummingbird's silhouette fashioned so delicately, long and slender, a sickle bill, now pulsing out of the orange-scarlet heart of ember glow, ebbing and waxing, this self-tending furnace going for hours untouched. How the solitaries survive by maintaining their grip, and hedge bets by banking their coals accordingly. The beloved has wings given to volatile displays, caprice and departure, upon trains of indecipherable thought. At any given point on the ridgeline, the snowfall rate varied. The parkway bare on the border of Shining Rock, The back on the arc lobe to mountains to sea trail was deepening. No view from the Devil's Courthouse. White out conditions prevailed. The cloud ceiling so low as if the sky's bottom fell out, above and below, coalescing in the dissolution of vision's field. All those giant mountain laurel and rhododendrons, thousands of buds, dormant, violent, yews encased hidden passions under protection of the snow's wall of winter warmth. How long to hold out for the opening and return from the woods with skills born bushwise and honed axe edge, ground sense, freshly split humor and nerve, balls out bearing on magnetic north, ultimate tool of destiny, coordinates along certain lines of life. That fire-building sensibility creeps down its kinetic, traveling cell to cell from cognition to ignition, spread by the metabolic inferno, carrying swatches of wonderment in a survival sack for always, take notice, never running, but living outside of time. And that piece was written in memoriam to Stevie the cat, one of the most loyal companions I've ever had. And with that, let me, with two pieces here to fade off into the darkness. Mythmouth. Mythmouth. When I first wrote that, I said it 10 times fast. It was not easy. Mythmouth. Our star sun makes the body earlier than the word steps out of the mouth. Returns on the first breath when falling asleep to climb back in, digesting. Makes a dream come through the veil, forming myths, generate a life, sign, hands up in the trance, hands down, laying out cards played or forgotten. Are there with matter, ceremonial day, table set and serving. For those dreamers, the moon is full, memories, some distinct. The juice of an orange brought up on the sun making its way into the stomach's cellular store. Others, how you appear in their dreams mean they're our pets, we are animals too. Replace and place, memorize, hanged man, ories, but trees with roots that extend all the way into every waking membrane. Don't forget they take the form of food, and the realization is skin, then deep sleep. Thanks.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Podgurski and Timotha Doane. Thank you so much. Hang around a while. I think there's a little wine left in this bottle. Yeah. All right. There are books. There's Robert's here too. These are $10 a piece. Quite the deal. And back there we have a very elaborate limited edition book that's all sealed up, but
And a
It's a mystery.
little more dear.
and a little more dear. But see me about the price. Something else.
I saw the size of it and I saw it. As tall as